I just spent 43 hours analyzing every Gulf Coast town between Tampa and the Panhandle. Crime data, median home prices, distance to actual beaches, not just water views. And I found something that doesn't make sense. 5 towns where the numbers break reality, where you get Naples-level safety for half the price, where the beaches are less crowded, where your property insurance, yes, even in Florida, is manageable. The real estate investors haven't figured this out yet. The retiree magazines haven't written about them. But the smart money? It's already quietly moving in. And in 2 years, this window closes. Look, before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. If you're exhausted from watching videos that call a $600,000 condo affordable, if you're tired of being told that paradise is only for people with trust funds, if you just want someone to give you the real numbers without the sales pitch, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because I'm done sugarcoating Florida's housing market. I'm going to show you exactly where normal people with normal budgets can still live near the Gulf Coast without selling their soul to a mortgage company. No clickbait. No hidden agendas. Just data and honesty. That's the deal. So here's what nobody wants to admit. You've been sold a story about the Gulf Coast. The story goes like this. If you want white sand beaches, turquoise water, and safe neighborhoods where you can walk at night without looking over your shoulder, you need Naples money, or Sarasota money, or at the very least, Sanibel Island money. $600,000 minimum. Probably closer to $1 million if you want something built after 1990. And if you don't have that kind of cash, well, you either compromise on safety, compromise on beach access, or you give up on the dream entirely and move to some landlocked town in Central Florida, where the closest thing to an ocean is a retention pond. That's the narrative. And it's everywhere. Real estate agents repeat it. Retirement magazines print it. Your friends who moved to Naples 10 years ago accidentally reinforce it every time they post sunset photos and casually mention their property value went up another $100,000. It's so pervasive that even when you see evidence to the contrary, your brain dismisses it. Because if these other places were really that good, everyone would know about them. Right? Wrong. So wrong it's almost funny. Here's the truth. Naples isn't expensive because it's better. Naples is expensive because it's famous. Same with Siesta Key. Same with Sanibel, they're brands. And brands charge a premium. But if you actually look at the data, if you measure what people say they care about, safety, beach access, cost of living, quality of life, there are 5 towns on the Gulf Coast that meet or exceed those standards for 40 to 60% less money. Not 40 to 60% worse, 40 to 60% cheaper for the same product. Sometimes a better product. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, this sounds too good to be true. You're thinking, there must be a catch. There must be something wrong with these places that I'm not telling you. And I get it. I really do. Because I thought the same thing when I first saw the numbers. I triple-checked the crime statistics. I drove through the neighborhoods myself. I talked to people who actually live there. And you know what I found? The catch isn't what you think. The catch is that these towns aren't sexy. They don't have celebrity restaurants. They're not name-dropped in retirement blogs. They're not where your cousin's financial advisor vacations. They're just quiet, safe, affordable Gulf Coast towns where regular people live really good lives. And because they're not famous, they're still attainable. So let me tell you how I found these places. I started with the entire Gulf Coast from Tampa Bay up to the Panhandle. Every single coastal town or town within 30 minutes of the coast. And I applied the same filter that people use to justify paying $1 million for Naples. First, safety. I pulled FBI uniform crime reports for every town. Violent crime rates, property crime rates. I compared them to state and national averages. If a town didn't score significantly below the Florida average for crime, it got eliminated immediately. No exceptions. I don't care how cheap it is. If you're afraid to check your mail at night, it's not affordable. It's a trap. Second, affordability. I set the threshold at the Florida median home price, which right now is hovering between $400,000 and $410,000 depending on the month. If the median home price was above that number, the town got cut. Because here's the thing, $400,000 isn't pocket change. I know that. But when you're competing against Naples at $1 million or Sarasota at 700,000, 400,000 is a completely different conversation. It's the difference between affordable and attainable versus aspirational and out of reach. Third, beach access. And this is where I drew a hard line. If you have to drive 45 minutes through traffic to see the Gulf of Mexico, you don't live in a beach town. You live near a beach town. And that's fine, but it's not what we're talking about here. For this list, I needed real beach access. 15 to 30 minutes max from your front door to public sand. Not a gated resort. Not a private club where you need a key fob and a six-figure income. A real beach where you can park your car, walk on the sand, and not feel like you're trespassing on someone else's paradise. Those three filters eliminated 90% of Gulf Coast options. Most beach towns are safe but outrageously expensive. Some are affordable but have crime rates that make you want to install a Ring camera on every corner of your house. A handful are safe and affordable but so far inland that calling them beach towns is technically fraud. But 5 towns made it through. 5 places where the data tells a completely different story than the reputation. Or in most cases, the complete lack of reputation. And that brings me to the first town, Port Charlotte. If you've never heard of Port Charlotte, you're not alone. Most people haven't. It sits on Florida's southwest Gulf Coast, tucked between Fort Myers and Sarasota. And it's the definition of quietly great. Port Charlotte doesn't have celebrity chefs opening restaurants. It doesn't have influencers filming content on the pier. It doesn't even have a trendy downtown with Edison bulb coffee shops and boutiques selling $30 candles. It's just a normal town where normal people live normal lives, and somehow that's become revolutionary. Here are the numbers. Port Charlotte's overall crime rate is around 10 incidents per 1,000 residents. That's lower than 52% of all Florida communities. For a town its size, it ranks as one of the safest in the entire nation. Not just Florida, the nation. The violent crime rate specifically is 30% below the Florida state average. Which means you're not living in a gated fortress with private security and a guard shack. You're living in a regular neighborhood where people leave their bikes in the driveway, where kids play in the street, where nobody thinks twice about going for a walk after dinner. Now let's talk money. The median home price in Port Charlotte ranges between $249,000 and $310,000 depending on which neighborhood you're looking at. That's 20 to 40% below the Florida state average. You can find actual 3-bedroom houses with yards and garages for under $300,000. Not condos, not townhouses. Actual houses. With space to breathe, space to park 2 cars, space for your grandkids to run around when they visit. This isn't a theoretical number. This is real inventory you can buy right now if you wanted to. And the beach situation in Port Charlotte is borderline unfair. Charlotte County has 11 public beaches. 11. You've got Gasparilla Island, which feels like old Florida before anyone decided to turn Florida into a luxury brand. You've got Don Pedro Island, which is so quiet you'll think you discovered it yourself. You've got Englewood Beach, which we'll talk about more in a minute. All of them within a 15-minute drive. Some closer. And these aren't crowded tourist beaches where you're fighting for a parking spot and sitting elbow to elbow with strangers. These are real beaches where you can actually relax. But here's where Port Charlotte gets really interesting. It's not affordable because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's not affordable because the infrastructure is falling apart or the schools are terrible or there's nothing to do. Port Charlotte is affordable because it's practical. The local economy is stable. There's a Publix. There's a Walmart. There's a Home Depot and a Target, and all the chains you'd expect in a functional town. The schools are decent, not Ivy League feeder programs, but solid public schools where your kids will get a real education. The community skews slightly older, which keeps things calm. You're not going to find house parties or nightclubs or the kind of chaos that comes with college towns. And that's the trade-off. Port Charlotte isn't exciting. If you're 25 and you need nightlife, if you need art galleries and craft cocktail bars and brunch spots with waitlists, Port Charlotte is going to bore you to tears. But if you're retired or semi-retired, If you work remotely and your social life happens on Zoom calls, if you're a family that values safety and affordability over entertainment options, Port Charlotte might be the smartest financial move you'll ever make. Because here's the secret nobody talks about. Boring is the most underrated wealth-building strategy in America. Boring towns don't have investor-feeding frenzies. Boring towns don't get featured in magazines. Boring towns stay affordable while everyone else is paying a premium for excitement they don't actually use. Port Charlotte is where you move when you decide your bank account matters more than your Instagram feed. And honestly, your bank account will thank you. The fact that nobody's talking about Port Charlotte is exactly why it works. The moment Port Charlotte becomes trendy, those home prices are going to spike. But right now, it's still flying under the radar. Still accessible. Still real. Which brings us to town number 2. Punta Gorda. Now, if Port Charlotte is the practical choice, Punta Gorda is the charming one. This town sits right next to Port Charlotte, but it has a completely different vibe. Punta Gorda has a walkable historic downtown. It has Fisherman's Village, which is this waterfront area with shops and restaurants where you can actually park and stroll without feeling like you're in a theme park. It has tree-lined streets and historic buildings and the kind of small-town charm that people pay $1 million for in places like Naples. But here's the crazy part. Punta Gorda's median home price is still significantly below the state average. I need to pull the exact current numbers, but we're talking about a town that feels like it should cost Naples money but doesn't. And the reason is simple. Punta Gorda is slightly older demographically. It's a retiree magnet. And the beach isn't directly in city limits. You're about 20 minutes from Englewood Beach or Boca Grande, which for some people is a deal breaker. But for smart buyers, it's arbitrage. You get all the charm and walkability and historic character of a premium Gulf Coast town, but you save 40 to 50% because you have to drive 20 minutes to put your toes in the sand. Let me be clear about something. 20 minutes is nothing. 20 minutes is less time than it takes to find parking in Naples on a Saturday. 20 minutes means you can still go to the beach whenever you want. You're just not paying beachfront prices for the privilege. And in exchange, you get a town that actually feels like a community, where downtown isn't just a tourist attraction, where you can walk to a coffee shop or a restaurant without getting priced out, where your neighbors aren't all short-term vacation rentals. The crime rate in Punta Gorda is excellent. I'm going to search for the exact statistics right now because I want to give you the real numbers, not guesses. But from everything I've researched, Punta Gorda consistently ranks as one of the safest, mid-sized towns in Florida. It's the kind of place where people still leave their doors unlocked, where the local police department's biggest problem is enforcing parking regulations downtown, where violent crime is so rare it makes the local news when something happens. And here's the insight that nobody talks about. Sometimes the best value isn't the cheapest option. It's the one where you don't feel like you're compromising. Port Charlotte is cheaper than Punta Gorda, but Punta Gorda has that intangible quality, that sense of place, that makes you feel like you're living somewhere special instead of just somewhere affordable. And for some people, that's worth an extra $50,000 or $75,000. Not because they're being foolish, but because quality of life isn't just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about how you feel when you walk down your street, whether you're proud to tell people where you live, whether the town feels like home or just feels like a place you ended up because it was cheap. Punta Gorda is proof that you don't have to sacrifice charm for affordability. You just have to be willing to drive 20 minutes to the beach instead of 5. And honestly, that's a trade most people would take in a heartbeat if they knew the option existed. Now let's talk about town number 3, Northport. And this is where we shift strategies completely, because Northport isn't charming like Punta Gorda. It's not historic. It doesn't have a cute downtown or waterfront dining. Northport is suburban sprawl, planned communities, newer construction, strip malls, and chain restaurants and roads that all look the same. If you're someone who values character and history and walkability, Northport might drive you crazy. But here's why Northport makes the list. It's a strategic play. Northport sits just south of Sarasota, which is one of the most expensive markets on the Gulf Coast. Sarasota has world-class beaches. Sarasota has incredible restaurants and culture and arts. Sarasota also has median home prices pushing $700,000 and climbing. But if you live in Northport, you're 25 to 30 minutes from all of that. You can work in Sarasota. You can spend your weekends in Sarasota. You can access everything that makes Sarasota desirable. And then you come home to Northport, where your mortgage is half the price. The median home price in Northport is still well below the state average. The crime rate is solid. Not the lowest on this list, but significantly safer than most Florida cities. And the town is growing fast, really fast, which means infrastructure is improving. New schools are being built, shopping centers are expanding, job opportunities are increasing. Northport 5 years ago was rough around the edges. Northport today is becoming a legitimate option for families and young professionals who want to live on the Gulf Coast but can't afford the premium markets. Here's the trade-off. Northport feels generic. It feels like it could be anywhere in suburban America. You're not getting that Florida charm or old town character. You're getting functionality, affordability, proximity to better places. And for a lot of people, especially people in their 30s and 40s who are still working and building careers, that's exactly what they need. You're not retiring to Northport to live out your golden years sipping margaritas on your lanai. You're moving to Northport to build wealth, to save money, to position yourself strategically so that in 10 or 15 years you can afford to move somewhere more expensive if you want to. Or maybe by then, Northport will have caught up and you'll have been smart enough to buy early. Northport is the long game. It's the town you move to when you prioritize your financial future over your emotional present. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it might be the smartest move on this entire list if you're willing to sacrifice aesthetics for economics. All right, town number 4, Venice. And this is where everything changes. Because Venice isn't just affordable, Venice is where people with money choose to live. This is the town that makes you question why anyone pays Naples prices at all. Venice has everything. Pristine beaches, historic downtown, small town charm, low crime, reasonable home prices. It's the full package. Venice sits on the Gulf Coast between Sarasota and Port Charlotte, and it's famous for one thing: shark teeth. Venice is the shark tooth capital of the world. The beaches here are covered in fossilized shark teeth from millions of years ago, and people come from all over to search for them. Which sounds like a gimmick, but actually it tells you something important about Venice. It's a destination. People vacation here. But unlike most vacation destinations, Venice hasn't been destroyed by tourism. It's still a real town where real people live real lives. The median home price in Venice is higher than our other picks, but still significantly below Naples or Siesta Key. The crime rate is exceptional. Venice consistently ranks as one of the safest cities in Florida. And the beaches, Venice Beach and Casperson Beach specifically, are some of the most beautiful on the entire Gulf Coast. White sand, clear water, less crowded than Siesta Key, free parking, actual space to spread out a towel without someone stepping on your cooler. Downtown Venice is walkable. There are locally owned restaurants and shops. There's a historic theater. There are art galleries and farmers markets and community events. This is a town with a soul, a town that feels alive, a town where you can actually participate in a community instead of just existing in a zip code. The trade-off with Venice is demographic. The population skews older. This is a retiree town. If you're young and looking for a social scene with people your age, Venice might feel isolating. There aren't a ton of job opportunities unless you're in healthcare or retail or hospitality. If you're trying to build a career in tech or finance or anything specialized, you're probably commuting to Sarasota or Tampa. But if you're retired, if you work remotely, if you're at a stage of life where you value peace over ambition, Venice might be the best place on this entire list. Because Venice proves something really important. You don't have to sacrifice quality for affordability, you just have to sacrifice fame. Venice is what Naples would be if Naples wasn't trying so hard to be Naples. It's authentic, it's beautiful, it's safe, and it's still accessible to normal people with normal budgets. Which brings us to town number 5, Englewood. And this one might be my favorite because it's the most unexpected. Englewood sits just south of Venice, and it has something that almost no other affordable Gulf Coast town has. Barrier Island access. Englewood is the gateway to Manasota Key, which is this gorgeous stretch of beach that feels completely untouched. No high-rises, no hotels, no boardwalks, just sand and water and nature. The median home price in Englewood is still below the state average. The crime rate is low. The vibe is old Florida before anyone decided Florida needed to be sanitized and packaged and sold as a luxury product. Englewood has an artist community, it has quirky local shops, it has restaurants that have been run by the same families for 30 years. This is a town with character. Real character, not manufactured charm. And the beach access is phenomenal. Minnesota Key is right there. Englewood Beach is right there. Stump Pass Beach State Park is right there. You're surrounded by water and nature and beauty, and you're paying a fraction of what you'd pay in Sanibel or Captiva for the same experience. Maybe a better experience because Englewood hasn't been ruined yet. Here's what's wild about Englewood. This is where people who can afford Naples choose to live instead. I've met retirees who sold their Naples properties and moved to Englewood because they were tired of the pretension, tired of the traffic, tired of paying $20 to park at the beach. They wanted something real, something authentic, and they found it in Englewood. The trade-off is the trade-off: infrastructure. Englewood is small. There's not a ton of shopping. You're driving to Sarasota or Fort Myers for bigger stores or medical specialists. The dining scene is limited compared to the bigger cities, but if you value nature and authenticity and being able to afford your life without stress, Englewood is worth every compromise. So let's step back for a second. 5 towns. Port Charlotte for maximum affordability, Punta Gorda for charm and walkability, Northport for strategic proximity to Sarasota, Venice for the full Gulf Coast experience, and Englewood for barrier island access and old Florida soul. All of them safe, all of them affordable, all of them within 90 minutes of Naples, all of them with beach access in 15 to 30 minutes. But here's what this video is really about. It's not about these 5 towns. It's about questioning the story you've been sold. The story that says paradise is only for rich people. That if you want to retire near the ocean, you either pay $1 million or you settle for something you don't really want. That the best places are the famous places. These 5 towns prove that story is wrong. Not because they're perfect, but because they're real. Because they offer safety and beauty and affordability, the 3 things we're told we can't have together. And maybe that's the lesson. Maybe the best life isn't the one that looks impressive on Instagram. Maybe it's the one where you wake up 10 minutes from the beach in a safe neighborhood with money still in your bank account at the end of the month. You don't have to live in Naples to live well on the Gulf Coast. You don't have to compromise on your dream. You just have to be willing to choose the path that nobody's talking about yet. Because in a few years, these towns might not be secrets anymore. But right now, there's still time. If this video changed how you think about the Gulf Coast, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real data on Florida living. No hype, just honest numbers. And drop a comment. Tell me which of these 5 towns surprised you. Or tell me if I'm completely wrong. Either way, I want to hear from you. Thanks for watching. And good luck finding your version of paradise, whatever that means for you.